Well, hello, Devon. Hi, Michael. Thanks so much for joining me on a well-designed business today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us, LuAnn. This is such an
Excited
honor to meet
excited to
you.
be here, LuAnn.
Well, I'm looking forward to this conversation, you guys. It's funny, you told me that you listen to the show, so you know I say that a lot, but like it is true. It's like, I read the intake forms of things. I'm like, oh my God, this is a great one. This is a good one. So I'm excited about this conversation.
Yeah.
I know what I know, which is that Devon, you started your interior design firm prior to your husband Michael joining you.
Mhm.
2 years in, you said to me, and then he joined. And you guys have together built a very special, successful business. I guess I don't often ask, how did it happen? But I think let's hear, how did this happen? Because a lot of designers are like, I wish my partner could be in the business with me. So get us to, how did it happen for you guys?
Yeah. I can start. Mike and I met back in college. We went to Northeastern University in Boston. And while we were there, we both did co-op programs while we were there. We got a lot of exposure in the industry. Um, we moved to Chicago a few years after we graduated. And when we were here, I started out working in more commercial firms, so Perkins and Will, when I was in Chicago. And ultimately, I really wanted to get more into the residential world and just be working one on one with my clients, working on more kind of intimate spaces. So I left and kind of started, at the time, it was just Devon Grace Interiors, and kind of brought that commercial experience to the residential world a little bit. It was just me at the time, but I was, modeling projects and working in SketchUp, things like that, kind of starting small. But about a year and a half in to starting the business, it was just me, and I think I had a part-time assistant. I think she worked 5 hours a week. It was very
So you're
small.
grinding it out.
Yeah. I we had always kind of joked that eventually someday Mike should join the business, but two things happened. So, ironically, I listened to your podcast a lot at the time when I was starting out, just to kind of figure out what to do. I did not know how to start a business. And one of the episodes, the Sid and Shay McGee, I think it was their first or their second interview on the show, but they talked about when Sid joined and kind of what that was like. And so I kind of took that home, mentioned it to Mike. I was like, hey, other people do this. There is something here. We think differently. I'm very creative. Mike is very ops focused, business minded. So there's a lot to be said there. I think we each could
Mm.
have our own road, our own lane. Um, and then Mike, I don't know if you want to tell what ultimately kind of
Yeah.
made you join.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I don't know this
So
story.
so kinda like Devin said, two things happened at the same time. I was working for Autodesk as a consultant in tech, traveling Monday to Thursday most weeks, for a couple years doing that. So I was growing a little
Yikes.
fatigued of that much movement. And then also at
Mm.
that same time, Devin said, I want an office. And so I asked her.
'Cause at the time, I was giving client presentations in our two-bedroom condo at the dining table. It was not
Yeah,
it wasn't
yeah,
working.
Not quite the elevated
yes.
experience you
Yeah,
were going
Yeah,
for.
so
exactly.
coming from, again, more of a business background, my initial reaction to that was, well, let's justify this. Do you have enough revenue and profit to afford an office? And, she said, well, I don't know. So I said, put together a business plan and a forecast, and then let's look at it together. And
And she's like, "Could you do
Yeah.
that for
I had
me?"
never looked or paid
yeah,
attention.
I
It
did,
was
I did help her a little bit, but I will give her credit where it's due. This is the most motivated Devin has ever been to pay attention to
Aw,
finances. So she put together
love it.
a forecast, and I looked at that and said, "Wow, the pipeline looks pretty good. This is pretty exciting. I'm going to quit my job, and let's really try to, put boosters under this thing and grow it." So that's when and how I
Wow.
joined. We weren't married yet. We were engaged.
Yes.
So the parents were,
Our families thought we were crazy.
Oh, I can
yeah,
Yeah.
imagine.
they weren't excited about the prospect. So that's essentially how it started, and then the rest is hopefully some history we can talk about more today.
So, okay, so let me pick a few things apart in there. So you're not married, you're engaged.
Mm-hmm.
You officially form a corporation, an LLC or something,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, how far off was the wedding?
This was in April. We got married in July. So
Okay, so not
3 months.
horribly. Okay, but still, we're not down the aisle
Right.
actually yet, right? Um, but and at this point, you know each other how long at this point from college to where are we?
This year we've been together 11 years. So I mean, we were
Okay.
only 3 years into probably our
Oh, so
relationship.
you actually were out of your
Yeah,
mind.
Yeah, we
absolutely.
Okay.
were.
I love that. Yeah, I would have looked at my kid and been like, "I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Can we just hire him for a minute and then like if he doesn't work out, we can fire him too."
Right.
yeah.
We can give him a good salary, all the things, but are we putting his name on the paper? Okay. But the thing is, tell me about that. Did you just everybody thought you were crazy,
Yeah.
but you guys just trusted each
The way
other and
we
just knew?
justified it, because I think parents didn't understand this to the depth that we did, but our brains work so differently. Our expertise are very different. I am, to Devon's earlier point, very finance, operations, project management focused, business growth focused. I am not a creative person naturally, whereas I think Devon has all the other skill sets that I don't. So we knew that at least
Mm.
we would have some complementary, skill sets, and there'd be less room for overlap and argument and dispute. Not saying there's none of that, because there certainly
There
is,
still is
but
some.
yeah, that was how we justified it at the time.
Yeah. And even
Well, and I
today.
think
Oh, sorry.
yeah, and I was gonna no, that's okay. I think I was just gonna say even I can see how impactful that interview with Shay and Sid must have been.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like I have the interview and I'm like, right, you're like me and Vin. You're like the two
Yeah.
opposites. It
Yeah.
seems easy to me, right? But I can see now putting myself in your place and going, wait, this is a thing. Like the person that you love on the other side of the table is a completely different type of person. And that's a good thing in a business as
Yeah.
opposed to, will we be able to do this? Will he ask me, to reselect the sofa? No, he doesn't care about the sofa. He just cares how much the sofa costs and how much you are charging your client
Right.
for it, right?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's important you have to each bring different skill sets to the table, so that you
Yes.
create this. I mean, and I think in interior design in particular, it's such a creative industry. I think it's so valuable for, your first hire or your first partner to be someone that thinks differently than you
Differently.
and focuses on the business as a whole and where it's going and what your plans are and how you get there. And I just don't think that way. I think in the moment, I'm just focusing on, how things look, how they come together. And Mike comes in with kind of the contrasting viewpoint, which I think is what's
Right.
made us successful. So,
That's awesome. So now, what was the runway there? So you take a look at the business plan, you look at her pipeline, you're like, "Oh, hey, you got something going
Yeah.
on over here." I had no idea. I've been out of town every single week and I didn't know that you
Yeah.
were killing it. So, what like is it like, let me give 2 weeks notice or let's give it like what did you do?
Yeah. So at the time, I was sort of primary breadwinner, and we did some back of the napkin math that we had about a year of runway, where if this thing was a total disaster, we didn't need income for a year to kind of keep things status quo. So that was sort of the time that we felt like we had to do this test.
Mm,
And we can talk about some numbers later, but at the time I believe the revenue was like 50 or 60,000. And you had a pretty healthy pipeline of work, which I was excited to see, but we needed to grow
yeah,
to make sense of
mm.
it
it
for
was a
sure.
very small
Yeah.
business at the time. But,
Yeah,
but
and
yeah,
so what you're saying to me is when you looked at what she was doing currently, it wasn't that there was enough for you to be employed there, but you personally together had enough to give it a year shot. And now you establish, I'm going to assume you're going to tell us that you establish a target that it had to hit because once the personal money was gone, then Devon Grace Interiors had to cough up a paycheck,
yes.
right? Okay.
Precisely.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Okay. So I like that. And you know what's funny is, Michael, talk about that for a minute, because it's funny because where it comes up for me with interior designers, an analogous conversation is, for example, when I'm talking with interior designers about the possibility of them working in my chairman of the board program with me. The chairman of the board program is five figures. I mean, I'm going to be with you all year. Like, you know what? Like, I'm going to pour into you like you have never met anybody pouring into you. And I know that's how I'm going to do this. And we're going to make big strides in your business. I know that too. It's not inexpensive. And what's so funny is that there are 1,000 different ways to process that investment. And what's so interesting is very few designers will come to it with the frame of mind of, okay, well, I'm going to pull that from my personal money, or I'm going to take the profits of the company from last year and I'm going to reinvest it in that. It's like a lot of designers want to do it and they would be a good fit. And they are like, oh, I don't have that much money in my bank account. And I'm like, I don't think you do. I mean, if you do,
Right.
that's great. But like, there's risk with business. Talk about it, Michael.
Yeah, there's certainly risk, but you got to think about the upside. I think that's what helped me take I mean, major pay cut. Went from, I think at the time I was making 200 something, 200,000,
Oh
and we,
my God.
went to zero. But yeah, it's
Can
just
I bite gum this week, Devin? I don't know gum for me.
But the thing
yeah,
was, I think that's almost the motivation, right? Like
Right?
I mean, maybe that's bad business advice, but it's almost like the scarier the leap is, the more motivated you are to really buckle down. You know that you're personally investing in this. And if it fails, that's on you and you have to kind of figure that out. So I think that was, those first few years when we were starting out, we were the most sleep deprived, stressed people we've ever met. We had no social life because we were just
Mm,
putting every ounce of energy
building
that
it
we had into the business and waking up and just starting work until the moment we fell asleep, and weekends didn't exist, but we loved it because we were building this and we were starting this. And
together.
yeah, so it was something we were really proud of.
Yeah. It's funny because I remember when we started Window Works, Vinny went 18 months without a paycheck.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah.
It's
wow,
the same thing. You know what
yeah,
I'm saying? Like it's the same thing. And it's like, and you guys had it in savings, and he had a tax business on the side, and he had a refereeing business on the side, and he had two health clubs on the side, and he was a full-time probation officer for the city of Newark.
Yeah.
I mean, he had like four side
Oh,
hustles.
yeah.
So, right. So, Window Works did not pay the man a
No.
dime for 18 months, but he paid me because I didn't have 16,000 things on the side and we weren't married yet.
Yeah.
Let's
There you
remember
go.
that part, right? And also what he did was any money that he would have allocated to his own personal salary, he put back into marketing.
Yeah.
And that was the way he did it. And I think that sometimes, look, you can start an interior design business at your dining room table and never have expenses, and you go 20 years, and your cost to be open number is $1,000 a month. It's the technology that you have, right?
Mhm.
And but there's a difference when you intend to do what you've done, is grown a business in 6 years to $8 million, gross revenue, and 14 employees. Like there's no wrong lane, but I think the disconnect is sometimes others will look at people like yourself that have grown it exponentially and have obviously created exponential net profit in that growth, that it's just like, they stepped into the lucky lane. It's like, no, no, right? It was
yeah.
planned. It was
We
planned.
it was planned, and also the path to the lucky lane was
Grueling.
very
Yeah.
painful.
Exactly.
Like I remember, Devin, I just remember the first kitchen renovation
Oh, yeah.
was, and we were
It was an IKEA
forced
kitchen.
to do an IKEA kitchen. The clients requested this, and
It turned out beautifully, but
Oh,
it was
painful though. Trying to
painful to
make it
put
a
together.
non-custom thing be a
We
custom
spent,
thing,
yeah,
right?
I think the first like month of Mike working here, every evening we were going over to their house and just organizing parts, like just trying to figure out
Oh
yeah,
my God.
how, yeah, It was so, yeah.
It's funny because I remember a similar story. The first time we decided, oh, no, actually, we are a custom window treatment retailer that does not install your ready-made shutters.
Yeah.
It was the same thing. I can remember going out to this project. They wanted custom shutters. I measured the living room and dining room. Like back in 1982, it was like $4,000 for custom shutters. And even I was like, holy crow, that's insane. I mean, I said it with a straight face, whatever, right? But she was like, absolutely not. And so then a couple days later, they called back and they said, we went to the local hardware store. No joke. The Home Depot wasn't even open in our area yet. We went to the local hardware store and they sell these ready-made shutter panels. And, we can get all of them for like $350. Will you install them?
Yeah.
Now, my first knee jerk reaction is no.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just like, no, but not because of no from any knowledge. I'm just like, that's ridiculous. Get your neighbor to do it for you. Right. But I tell Vinny, and Vinny is watching the checkbook and it's a brand new business. And he's like, go get the money.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? And he goes, tell them $780 for Billy to install them, something like that, which was like a gabillion dollars to us. And he was like, the price was 4,000. She told you it was 3. This is going to end up being $3,000 less. If they don't see the value in it, then we'll walk away. Well, we charge the $780 or whatever. I think Billy was there a week putting up these shutters that if they were custom would have been done in a half a
Hours.
day.
Yeah.
But it was like, because when you do, a non-custom product under a custom umbrella, now all of a sudden, I'm looking at them on day one going, well, the windows are 30 and the 2 shutters are 32, like the 2 doors. There we can install them, but they're not going to close. Oh, it'll be good enough until Billy's there. Then it's like, can't you shim this and
Right.
can't you shim that and can't you? And he's out in the driveway shimming like these crappy shutters. It was a nightmare.
Yeah.
But you
It's
learn the
tough, though.
lessons, right?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
early on, I mean, we did the same thing. Early on, you say yes to everything and you figure it out and you figure out how to, make it into something that you can photograph and grow from and kind of bring it to the next level. But it is nice to be in a position when you eventually get to a place where you don't have to necessarily say yes to projects that aren't the right fit like that. Yep.
That's it. Well, and the thing is, I always say, people are like, I'm afraid to say no. I'm like, believe me, you're going to get the one that is going to make it very easy to say no to
Yep.
all the others.
Correct.
It's like, keep saying yes. You don't listen to me. It's fine. But don't call me when you get the one, you'll just rethink of me and you'll remember, oh, that was the painful one.
Yep.
That was the beyond, right?
Lessons learned. Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
So question for you.
Mhm.
So you start out, you make a plan, you probably have a revenue goal plan, you have a number of projects planned. I can just imagine the way you did it. Michael laid it all out in order to get paid the following year. I'm curious I'm kind of curious from your perspective, Devon, and I'm hitting you off the fly with this. So if you don't really have an answer for it, it's perfectly fine. But I'm curious, when Michael sat down and went, okay, I'm giving up 200K. I'm going to come into this. We have a year's worth of money. I understand from you, from what you've said to me before, you were highly motivated. You wanted him in this business with you, right? You
Yep.
could see the future of how good this could be.
Yep.
But when he sat down, and maybe you did it together, but when you guys sat down and you figured out, okay, X amount of projects at, I'm going to make a guess. I know how I build it for my COBs. Okay. We do kitchen and bath design. We do one-off rooms. We do full floors. How many of each do we need to make the revenue? What's the net profit on each? What are our most profitable jobs? What are the ones that we use as filler jobs? What are the big things? So whatever your criteria was for figuring that out, did you have a reaction of, oh my God, how are we ever going to do that? Like, I know I can see it in you, Devon, that you're driven, that you seem very much like me. You put the carrot and I will go get that carrot. I don't, you know what I mean? But did you have the wherewithal to be like, that doesn't seem quite possible, but if he says that's the number we have to hit, then we have to hit it, and you just let me out of the barn. I got to go.
I'm trying to remember. I think I never even questioned it. It was just like, all right, that's what we're doing. And then I'm definitely more of a yes person than Mike. I said yes to literally everything and would probably overload myself. Because at the time it was just me and then, a part-time design assistant. So I would definitely overload the work, but I just knew like we have to meet that. And so we just have to
This is
say
what it
yes
is.
to
Has to do
everything
it.
that comes across our plate and figure it out. And so it never scared me. I guess the two of us were never really scared when we did it. We were very confident and just knew that we could do it. And so it was just a matter of just having the grit to put in the hours, put in the time, and really build it. And when we did, there were obviously moments of stress and fatigue and times when we would feel a little burnt out, and we just had to remind ourselves, it always kind of staggers where if I'm feeling burnt out, Mike would kind of step in and pull me back up and remind me like, hey, this is the big picture. This is our goal. This is what we're working towards. And vice versa. Whenever he's getting burnt out, I kind of pull him up. So we've worked well over the past 8 years now doing that. And I think recently in the past few years, we've finally kind of reached this point where we have weekends again. We were able to have
Yeah.
our first child. We put that on hold while we were building this. We knew we couldn't do both at the same time. So
Right.
we're at a place now where it's leveling out and we've built a really solid team that is helping us grow to these goals. And, it's just an amazing feeling, but it was never scary. It was just motivating, I guess.
I love it. I love it. And Michael, how about you? When you do the numbers and you're like, okay, you did 50,000, 60,000 gross revenue last year. Obviously, that's not going to get me my $200,000 paycheck. So when you did the numbers, is it like you just laid them out and you're like, here it is, go hit it, kid. Like that's
Yeah,
it.
I think we took her initial forecast and year one was let's hit that. And then from that point, frankly, I was kind of just amazed that we were still able to grow every year. In the early days were definitely the most exciting because the starting number is so
Double over,
small. You're
double
like,
over, double
oh,
over. Yeah.
we 4x last year.
That's
Like,
it. That's it.
yeah, those days are gone. It's hard to it's
Yeah.
hard to find growth
You don't
today.
want them like that now,
No.
though, because you would absolutely like lose your brains if
Yes.
if it went from 8 million to 16 million in a year.
Yep.
It's one
Yeah,
thing going from 200 to 400, from 400 to 8. I mean, honestly, my experience is all the way up to 4 was figure outable.
Yep.
And then it was like, holy crow,
Yeah.
there's a whole
yeah,
other level here.
Yeah.
Right.
yes, yeah.
So you guys are
I
at
agree.
8 million now. So 4 to 8 is a big difference,
It is
right?
a big
Yes,
difference. And, we also, I think last year, we intentionally said, hey, we almost need to plan to not grow this year and to
Yes.
almost level out so that we can really tighten up some internal processes. We were bringing general contracting in-house. We were, opening up a new vertical, and we knew that's going to change things, but that's okay because, again, that's kind of looking forward towards our next long-term goal and what we want for the business. But I
I'd say
guess, sorry, go ahead.
I'd say one other thing that's important is the whole way through, we were not just looking at top line. We were very focused on bottom line
Good for you.
because we are a services business. This is not a line of work where you get to likely make a big exit the way a tech company would with a 20x multiple on EBITDA. So you've got to make money along the way. So
Yes.
it was not just being excited about the top number. It was
Oh,
really
yes.
making sure the
Like Vinny
bottom
calls the
number.
drip. What's the drip?
Yeah.
What are we
Yeah,
doing this for? I don't care if it's a $10 million company. If I'm making 100K, that's a dumb company. You know what I'm
exactly.
saying? And
Yeah,
it's so funny that you say that the focus shifted a little bit more to efficiencies and stuff like that. I can remember when we got Window Works to 4 million and we were starting to look at projections heading to 5. And for me, I think back very clearly. We had such defined processes from the beginning. Vinny is a literal lunatic when it comes to processes. And those processes got us pretty, pretty easily. I'm about to say pretty easily, and we all know there was nothing easy about it. But, like it's like childbirth. It was like, I wasn't that bad pushing that baby out of me. Let's do it again. But in the moment, you're like, are you kidding me? Right. So, like, quote air quotes around pretty easily. We got to 2 million, right? The hardware store shutters and the Christmas Eve installations notwithstanding. All right. But the 2 to 3 was like a wait, what you talking about, Willis moment. And then to 4 was like, we barely stabilized 2 to 3. And now all of a sudden, bang, we're at 4. And when, they're all sitting around the table at WindowWorks and they're talking about pushing to 5, it didn't happen. But I remember proposing to my esteemed partner, husband, and the others at the table. Why don't we, instead of projecting a goal for growth, why don't we project a goal for more net profit? Like, let's shore up efficiencies. And I thought I was going to be talking his language. I thought he was going to like, wow, you're amazing. Oh, Grasshopper, you finally learned from me. Right. Like, and he was like, wait, what? No, we're pushing to 5. I'm like, can't we just make 4, but make more money at 4?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because so it's an interesting concept, though. There is a stage where you can just make more money at that level, because what I found, you tell me, that big growth, 2 to 4, there's a lot of wasted stuff there, because you're just like, hire a person to do that, hire a person to do that. We got to get it done, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Did you have that
Definitely.
experience?
Yeah.
We did.
And I think for me, the toughest part, I think, was learning, because as we grew revenue, to your point, we're hiring a team, we're building a team, and I'm a designer, right? I'm focused on designing and just creating things. And so learning how to manage a team and have people take, delegating work and doing things like that.
Establishing accountability.
Yeah, it was a huge struggle for me.
Aren't you just
early
a
on.
grown up and you'll do it because you're supposed to do it?
Yeah.
Oh, I got to make sure you did it.
Yeah.
Dang it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially the early days. When you
Yes.
don't have a name and you're in growth mode, similar to projects, you got to take hires who are willing to work here, and there's not much choice in the matter.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's definitely a hard point in growth. And I think you nailed the number pretty tightly, LuAnn. For us, I think it was between the 4 and the 8 million growth that we were having. Our biggest challenges were making sure that the product and the service was still really high, while Devon and I basically transitioned most, if not all, the work to employees.
Yeah.
That was a big transition point.
It's so funny. I think I've sneezed 3 times in 1,000 episodes, and I said the thing to you, and I just sneezed.
I'm glad you said it.
That's it. Okay. Yeah. So that's a thing, right? It's like that transition, that it's what I always felt like I always could, I felt it, like the growth stages. Whether, you go back in the beginning years, like the first 100,000, then 100 became 250, and then 250 all of a sudden became 750, right? And it was more significant and difficult to overcome the higher in the millions that you got. But every stage, I literally could physically, it was like I felt the ground moving under us.
Yeah.
And that's what it always felt like to me. It was like, ooh, it was almost like being on, like when you haven't been on ice skates in 1,000 years and you're like, I know how to ice skate. And you're like, no, I don't.
Yeah.
Never mind. Nope, I don't.
Yeah.
You're like wailing all over the place. And, I think being in it in partnership, for us, it's our spouses, all of us, right? But being in partnership with somebody that you have complete trust in, that does have that different skill set, is so critical. Because like when you were talking, Devon, about there are times when, Michael's going to bring you up and you're going to bring him up. I know for us, those times were when I knew, like, my job was to sell. I got to sell. And that's why I wondered, and I'm not surprised that you never had fear, because if Vin said that was the number to hit, I just hit the number.
Yeah.
I just had to do whatever I had to do. It just, okay, that's the number we have to hit. Like, I can't worry. It wasn't even, if he said to hit it, then it must be a way to do it. Like, that's just, I just took it as gospel.
Yeah.
Right. But I remember times when maybe I wouldn't hit the number for 2 or 3 or 4 months in a row. And he'd be like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And that's the moment he would be like, hey, it's fine. It's like, and I was like, oh, right. He knows how to pay the bills and he knows how to move the money. Like, just go back and hit your number. Get back. Like, it
Yeah.
was that kind of thing. Are you finding that dynamic between the two of you?
Yeah, I think to be honest, you guys are talking about like the milestone hurdles that we kind of jumped through on a revenue standpoint. I don't even know I just tune it out. I don't even pay attention to that stuff which Mike probably hates to hear because he would love it if I paid more attention to that. But
As long
I
as she
think,
gets it done.
yeah, I never approach it differently based on what our goals are or anything. It's just like, this is just, we just need to keep grinding forward and doing this. And
You must feel it though,
I
Devin, when
feel
there's
for
more
sure,
eyeballs
for
around
sure.
you, or like you mentioned, all
Yeah.
of a sudden it's like, oh, I was just over here designing. Now I have to make sure you're designing too,
Yes.
or you're calling the people.
Yeah.
So
That,
you're not recognizing it according to the revenue numbers, but you're feeling the
yeah.
transitions though,
And to
right?
your point, when we would be in those moments, I would probably, those are the moments where I would be the most stressed out because we're just executing so much. We're being pulled in so many different directions and there's just so much happening all at once. And, I would turn to Mike. And I think there is something so valuable in having your spouse be your partner because you know how to speak to each other, you know how to communicate through these things, and you just trust the other person
Yep.
with your life,
I
obviously.
I
And
will
yeah.
give you more credit than you're giving yourself. When we are behind in revenue
Hmm.
goals, and I like to n- occasionally remind her of that, and because you do react and you are motivated when,
Yeah.
I don't think you care what the target is. I think it's
Yeah.
you get motivated when you feel like, ooh, we might be missing this target.
Yeah.
I'm
That's
gonna
true.
go do something.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's so funny. Do you know that I'm literally seeing me in you, Devin. I mean, Vinny literally, I can, and the funny thing is until the last day I sold window treatments 4 or 5 years ago, he literally used the same tactic on me for 40 years and it worked. And we would both laugh. I'd be like, like this, right? But he would walk up and he would say, like, so maybe I would come up and I'd be like, you know what, this October, this is on fire. Like I'm at
Yeah.
$440,000 for October. Blah blah blah. Like who's in charge now? Like this, right? And literally, almost every time he had it at the top of his head. But if he didn't, then the next day he'd look at me and he'd be like, "I just want to let you know, in 2013 you sold 490 in October. There's only 3 days left of the month." And I'd be like, oh wait, what? And so
Yeah.
he's like, yeah, I mean, if you want to actually have your best October ever,
Yeah.
you got 50K to go. You
Yep.
got 3 days. And I'd be like, dang it. And then there was nothing that could stop me. It's like I had to be at dinner that night and go, okay, it's the 31st. I'm at 491. You know what I mean? It's like nuts. I remember one year on Christmas, like we always close the 23rd of December. And I remember we were literally like, I think, well, the week before we were like $70,000 off of target for December. And I like gathered my peeps, like my admin, Kimberly was my assistant at the time. I'm like, we have 1 week. Folks, I am not closing this December out without beating last December. It is not happening. And furthermore, our goal number, if we don't hit this, we don't hit our year goal number.
Yeah.
So it's 2 goals that we
Yeah.
miss. This is not happening. And they're like, it's like December 18th. How can we do this? I'm like, I don't know, but we're going to fit. And we diced and sliced it. We called all the people. We looked all through the different things. And we get there and it's like 2 o'clock on the 23rd and we are $1,000 away. And I'm like, no way. I'm like, no way. I'm like, I think my mom needs blinds. I'm like, no way. And then all of a sudden the phone rang and somebody else came in and we did it. You know what I'm saying?
Amazing.
But
Yeah.
it's crazy, right?
Yeah.
It's crazy. I love the combination of the person who really knows the revenue and the net profit so that, the other person can just have the carrot and go,
Yeah.
but somebody's actually watching what's
Well,
happening.
and I will say it is so because I don't think this way and Mike does, it is so valued here. And I think our team now really appreciates this. Mike takes once a year, he sits down and like goes through the books and looks at how we did last year, looks at what our goals are for this year, and just breaks it all down and presents it to the team in, painstaking detail, what revenue was, what we paid for insurance, all of those things get kind of broken
Good for
out.
you.
And it's such a motivating day to see like, oh, last year was crazy. We were exhausted, but that's what we did. And, until you see
Yes.
that, and then that just kind of motivates you and fuels you for the next year and helps, just unite the team too of what the
Yes.
big vision is and what the big picture is. So I think it is really valuable and really important to look at all that and to reflect it. It's just, it takes someone who knows what they're doing and wants to dissect all those details. And so that's, Mike's
Well,
huge for
I
doing that.
got to, I had 5 years of PowerPoints in my previous career. So I kind of miss them. And, that's one thing I miss is a lot less presenting. Uh, and so I get pretty excited when that one meeting a year, I get to stand up and talk to the team for 4
It's
hours.
like his most favorite design project ever that you would do. He's like got his
Yep,
PowerPoints.
exactly.
This is our grid where the insurance was. This is what we
Yes.
spent in gasoline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is shipping. This is memos.
I also think that it's nice to have you need some metrics to set goals too, not just numbers, right?
Yes.
We've got other KPIs, and whether you can slice it in a million different ways. It can be, hey, we need to have 2 projects that are $1 million projects this year. We're trying to push more for renovations. That's one of our big
Mhm.
pushes right now, right? More renovations. So you can set whatever goals and metrics you want, but I think it's just important to have them, and it's important to say them out loud a lot
Yes.
throughout the year.
It's so true. It's so true because it's so funny because I just was writing the weekly email about the road to 1000 before
Yeah.
this morning, before I started podcasting today. So we're on the road to 1000 episodes and we're counting down the 5, top episodes from every year. And I'm sending an email out every week, like, oh, these were the ones from last week and the takeaways or whatever. And, I just wrote that line today. I was like, okay, so like, do you have a revenue goal? Okay. So I'm like, probably most of you don't. Like, I know I talked to you. Like, most of you actually don't, but that's okay. You can set one now. It's, July 2nd in real time as we're recording. You can set a revenue goal for the rest of the year. But I said, and if you do have a revenue goal, do you know where you are versus it year to date, where you're at?
Yeah.
Because if you have a revenue goal and the only time you ever talk about it is January when you set it and December if you made it or not,
It's
it's,
never going to
don't
happen. Yeah.
bother. Like it's a relevant number,
Yeah.
right?
It's
So
true.
I love that you said that. You have to know what your metrics are that you're trying to reach, and you have to talk about them often, and you have to really consciously go towards them. And it's so funny because I do the same thing with my chairman of the boards. It's like we analyze the different projects, the profitability of the different projects, and then we decide, you just said it, 2 $1 million projects a year, 5 renovations a year, 3 of these. It's like we need the mix
Yeah.
because when you know what you're going for, you know what you're going for. It's like, okay, I need $1 million project. Like I can't do anything until we figure out $1 million project, right?
Yeah. And
Right.
I think sorry, Mike, you might be about to say the same thing, but I think another thing that's important is Mike actually looks at the timeline of a project, right? Some of our projects go on
Right.
for 2 years. So we may sign this project now, but we're not going to see revenue from that project until next year. So it doesn't even count for this
Exactly.
year. So it's thinking about the different types of projects, the different size projects, what that means in terms of timeline and how that affects that year's revenue. That goes into Mike's analysis for the year and goals of how we need to be marketing and what we need to be looking for and what projects we need to say yes to versus which ones we need to say no to because they don't help us reach those goals.
Right.
So
It maybe in an effort to like simplify, especially for those in starting out in the beginning, since I know that's a big part of your audience, LuAnn, like the goal doesn't need to be obsessed over
Right.
early days. It's totally, frankly, it's even a well thought out forecast is still kind of a pie in the sky guess. It's just nice to have something
To
on
shoot for.
paper to
Yeah.
shoot for. And when you miss, it's okay. Use last year's data and set a new goal.
Yeah.
And it don't obsess too much about what it exactly it is. Just have
Yeah.
something to measure against.
Yeah.
Yes. Pull from last year's data, whatever it was,
Yeah.
and figure it out. Like, put 10% on it. Like, we don't have to go for
Yeah,
double, right?
Yep.
right.
It's funny too, because I know that with bigger firms like yourself, when you talked about the timeline and, putting it out there, it's like like you don't even, you go all the way down to the rabbit hole. I know when you run a big firm like yours, you tell us about it, Michael, is okay, yeah, $2 million projects a year, those are two projects that are going to go 2 years. Now, what can we take? We can take, like I said, I just use the number 5 renovations. These are going to turn over in 3 months. And so that's our cash flow, right? But you can't say yes to 10 of those because the team can't turn 10 of those, right? Talk us about that pipeline
Yeah.
structuring.
Yeah, in our business, we have a couple different means of revenue, and right. So the first and quickest and earliest is we bill design fees. That is like a lawyer bills. We bill our time. But what we learned as the business got bigger is that what really drives revenue is product.
Right.
And so that product comes to us in the form of a couple different things. We've got construction materials and that we procure and install, obviously furniture and decor and window treatments and all of that. And so when you look at the project cycle, at least for us, it starts early. First couple months are small amount of revenue comes from a project, but high profit, nice EBITDA comes from a project because fees are kind of direct to, bottom line. And then there's a big, interval of time in which the bigger chunks of money, the bigger checks, so to speak, get written over the life cycle of project, depending on if it's a new build, a renovation, or a furniture project, or in most of the cases now some combination of the two. And so
Mm,
we can look at previous projects and say 2 to 3 months of design time, then we procure construction materials over and put in construction trades over 4 or 5 months, whatever that is, and then the furniture revenue comes after that. And so you got to look at the overall estimated budget for this whole thing. Let's say it's 1 million, and 100,000 comes in the beginning, another couple 100,000 comes over the next couple of months, and then bigger checks toward the middle and end hit.
right.
And that's how when we have 20 of those going on at once, you got to stack them all up and just see how does this all line up.
Right. And the thing is, when you really are in tune with your pipeline and the allocation of the people on your team to the pipeline and the type of projects, you can look to see where there's going to be a revenue gap. Like we're like,
Yes.
oh,
Yes.
so then it's like plug in, like somebody calls and says, I want to flip this, thing around in 6 weeks. And you're just like, yep. Okay. We'll go do that one. Right. It's
Yep.
like, we're going to earn 50K between maybe product and design fees. And then that ties us right over. Like those are the types of things you have to
Yeah.
be aware of. Right.
Yeah. And we have to
That's
also look at that and adjust our marketing depending on what we're looking
Yes.
to kind of, what gaps we're looking to
Smart.
fill. So yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you nailed it. We just went through this exercise where we have some really big long-term projects, but in different periods of those, we need to fill gaps. And
Yeah.
so to Devon's point, we saw that coming. We started pushing, marketing messaging more toward renovations because they're a little quicker turnaround,
Yeah.
and plugged in some gaps and kept the
That's it.
team busy, and that's just part of the dance.
And
Yeah.
something
That
that
is it.
we do too on an even more like micro level almost is every 2 weeks we're meeting with our senior designers and looking at, what are our designers working on over the next 2 weeks and even further. And what does that mean in terms of, these intro calls that we're having and proposals that we're writing? Which ones should we
Yes.
focus on? Which ones do we even have time for that we can actually fit in? What does that look like in terms of just resource planning and bandwidth? Do we need to hire? All of those decisions where we're sitting down, it used to just be Mike and I making those decisions, but about a year ago, we started bringing the senior designers in too, because they have, they're managing all of the projects, alongside myself, and they just are able to help kind of see, oh, this person may be a little light next week. We can pull them onto this, or yes, let's fit in, this
And
2-room project, no problem for a few weeks.
and we want it's nice to have their buy-in.
Yeah.
If you
Yes.
include them on
Yes.
this, they're going to
Yes.
be
That
more
too.
motivated.
You
Yep.
didn't
Yeah.
shove the two-room project down their throat while they're working on the big, glorious, luxury $1 million bill.
Yep.
They understand the reason that they have to sidetrack and come over here and parallel do that two-room project, because that's what's going to pay the payroll for the next couple of weeks,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
Well, it's so funny because you know what? I think that, look, every business owner in the industry that I've talked to that runs a multiple million, once you get to 2 to 3 million, you start to really go, oh, okay, there's a chess game I have to play here, right? And it's not just like yes to everything or no to when somebody just pisses me off or whatever. And by the way, I'm never going to be in favor of, say you need 2 renovation projects to skate you through the next 3 months. I know exactly what that pipeline looks like, but you know what? I'm never going to be in favor of taking a yes because it's a renovation project when everything else is no about it. Like that's just horrible for you. It's
Yeah.
horrible for your team. There's another renovation project right after it. If you're looking for it, you will find
Yeah.
it. So I just want to say that you do have to be in your truth of what is good for your team and the kind of people that you work with, right? And the kind of
Yeah.
projects, right?
I mean,
Yeah. We
ultimately, whatever you sign, you're going to be working on, like we said earlier, you're going to be working with those people for a year, maybe more.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Even if it's 2
it's
months. I don't
even if
wanna
it's
work
2
with a
months,
jerk for
sure.
2 months.
But
No.
it's maybe pushing away other business and other opportunities that could come. So,
Yeah, yeah.
we have a sliding scale. Our filter changes depending on how badly we need the work. Now
Right.
there are there
Non-negotiables
there's
though, right?
non-negotiables,
Yes,
certainly,
yes,
but
yes.
we are, we're more open-minded, let's say, when we
Exactly.
have to be. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, that's business, right? That's business. And the other point that I was gonna make is that in the beginning of running the business, there's that I take everything. I take everything. I got to keep the doors open. Then there becomes the more selective process. And then I think there is another learning curve when you realize that in being selective, there still is that reality of what you just said. But we need to make the money because we're now looking at 5 sets of eyeballs or 6, or like in your case, 14 sets of eyeballs. And then the next layer, which you guys just described, and I'm just re-emphasizing the point, is the next layer isn't okay, we need to money to carry that quarter, so it's any project. No, it's like, do we need 2 renovations that quarter because we need contracted money? Do we need, a big project because we don't have something out for a year for money, right? And the thing is, I've had designers say to me, that's a layer that is annoying, quite frankly, like that I have to think of it that way. And I say, and they're like, other businesses don't think of it like that. Like Starbucks, just whoever comes to the door buys coffee and that's it. And I'm like, not really though, right? Like when you think about think about a major league sports team, you can be at the draft and there's, 12 great pitchers. You can't take all 12 great. You can't take all 12 $1 million jobs. You can't take 12 pitchers. You have to figure out the chess game of who's on the field. And it's the same thing with your pipeline, right, Michael? It's the chess game of who's in the pipeline so that the money is always flowing.
mhm.
Exactly. Yeah. And you have to also remember that, again, in the early days, I just want to encourage say yes to everything. Everything.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
yeah, now, I think our ratio is, I think we talk to about 200 people a year, reach out, and we do about 20 projects a year. So
Wow.
But something
we've,
else to just add in is, as our team grew, right, we also have to think about how we keep different roles on the team busy at different times too. So a
Yes.
hard lesson that we learned last year is, if we take on too many projects, we took on a few new construction projects where we're focusing a lot on design, and maybe there's less procurement because of just the way the relationships with the builders are on those projects. That keeps our design team busy. That brings in design fees, but then there's nothing for the PM team to do when
Yeah.
it comes to, when the design is complete. So then the designers need to kind of work on more projects and bring more in to trickle down to the PM team so that there's stuff for them to procure and manage. And we reached a point last year where a lot of those projects, you can't necessarily control the timeline of new construction projects. You're kind of at the will of the architects and the builders and the clients. And a lot of those hit at the same time. And that was when we realized, we need to really pivot hard and get some renovation and furniture projects in, which,
And we learned a lot about marketing
yes.
this year. Yeah, it's frankly something that we thought we knew a lot about,
Yeah.
but we didn't,
No.
especially when you're in need of, quick work that's very specific. There's
Yes.
a lot of different ways you can spend money on marketing, many of which do not yield good results. And we spent some money on marketing this year and learned which ones don't yield good results versus
Mhm.
which ones do. And I'd say that's a very painful process that neither of us were prepared for.
Mm.
No, because up
Now, and
until
I know that it's going to be different for every firm, but for you guys, what were the things that didn't work and what were the things in marketing that did work?
well, early on, yeah, early on, it was just Instagram. It was just organic. When I would say the first 5 or 6 years, it was me posting just everything that we were doing. And I
Right.
was sharing stories, showing the behind the scenes, um, trying to, this is before we even had a portfolio, curating pictures of our own condo or things like that, or just process renderings, things like that, just trying to get something up there and get momentum going. And that was really successful in the early years. And then we brought in a marketing manager. About 5 years in maybe to the business. And then she would kind of help create content, create reels, all of that. But it was all just that, just organic Instagram, no paid marketing, no paid ads. Until more recently when we realized we should probably try some different avenues. We shouldn't just rely on Instagram.
Well, and
Um,
we needed to.
yeah,
And maybe LuAnn, this is something many people who listen are experiencing, but those social media channels are really saturated, and it's just harder
Yep.
than ever to gain
Yep.
traction there. So yeah, frankly, some more traditional tactics are perhaps worth exploring, whether referral program or we did toy with some paid ads recently and had so-so
So, but go
results.
back to last year when you looked around and you were like, oh, our project procurement team has no work for the next 3 months. Holy cannoli. What are we going to do? What were some of the actual things that you changed and did, and what worked and what didn't work?
Yeah, we immediately dialed down our project minimum because that's something we kind of have as like a project
Interesting.
minimum. So we
Yep.
said, okay, let's dial down our project minimum, and like let's look at things that have uh, quick timelines. And so naturally, some furniture only projects and some renovation projects were most appealing. And so then we also started pushing that message out, hey, reach out for X, Y, renovation, and showed more images of in progress renovations, on our Instagram, on our social media, making sure the audience and others are aware this is something we do. If you're thinking about doing this right now, reach out.
yeah,
So just sort of really shifted the message and the focus.
Mm.
yeah,
That's great. Well, and the thing is, what's good is like when you say when you have 200 inquiries coming in a year, and you're taking 20, there's a lot of those smaller projects and furniture only that you're saying no, throw that fish back, and now all of a sudden you're like, no, 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 we'll take that fish this month,
yes,
right?
yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a hard
And
pill to swallow.
well,
I'm
but
not
and
gonna
it
lie.
comes from knowing what you need, though. See, it goes back to, is it a goal that just sits there in January and then you look at it in December? It's like knowing what you need because it's there. It's right in front of your face 98% of the time. You have to know what you're looking for in order to reel it in, right?
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so good. Wow. You know, it's so funny because we've been talking for an hour and we didn't talk about really what we intended to talk
I
about.
know.
But I don't know about you, but I thought this was great. I
Yes.
loved hearing your story. I think the thing that we intended to talk about, I'll put it in a nutshell, was how you approach your business from what I heard as we were pre-air chatting, um, was a very elevated experience that lends from your corporate experience, where it's not throwing the spaghetti at the wall, it's doing presentations a specific way, it's providing certain deliverables every time in the same way on projects, so that any consumer can come to this and know that you're in charge. That's what I heard. You said a whole lot of different words, but that's what I heard.
Yeah.
It's having a defined process. Now, is there something, Devon, you want to add to that, knowing that we are literally at the end here? But I know that that's what you're doing, and share your philosophy on it and how it happens.
Yeah, no, I think that was such a nice way to put it together. And so I think, what really has been at the core, core value of our business this whole time has been just what you said. Let's bring a, a cohesive, concise, professional experience to our clients. Our ideal clients are busy working couples, not necessarily couples, but just busy working people who trust experts and want to bring in an expert to deliver a space that they know that they're going to love, but they don't have the time or the energy or the patience to deal with it. So we've really created this process that um, brings them all the information that they need in as concise a package as possible. So we always tell them, you can be as involved as you want to be in the process, but ultimately we need 2 hours in the beginning of the project for a discovery session, and then we need you to come back into the office, 8 weeks later for maybe a 2 or 3 hour design presentation, and then you could check out if you
See you bye.
want.
Just
Yeah.
leave your
Like
checkbook.
we'll get it to the finish
Yeah.
line. Obviously people can, they're excited about the projects. They want to be more involved along the way, but we wanted to make sure that we had those deliverables um, in a format that are digestible and easy to communicate to clients, so that they fully understand everything they're getting. And that's where 3D modeling really came in. Mike's tech background, he kind of came to the company and said, if I'm going to be a part of this, we're going to utilize this. We're going to make sure that we're thinking about, the future and stay relevant with software as things are, being introduced. And so that's always just been very important to us.
Yeah, what I'd love to add is, as it relates to the process, everyone works differently, but we wanted the baseline to be an option where if someone is so busy and has 100% trust in a group like us handling it, we can deliver on that. The
Mm.
reality is that usually it's somewhere in the middle.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Folks are investing tremendous money into their houses. It's their life's work. So they are very involved. We're not the type of firm that says, we're just going to do this in isolation. But we wanted to set a process up where if they're busy people, they don't need to block out, weeks and weeks of their life, shopping around with us, and we're going to bring packages to them. If they want to iterate on that, we have a great way to do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, the technology helps. We say there's, some words that we don't use as much as I think other firms. Although, we don't say trust us all the time for making decisions. Sometimes you have to pull that one out of the bag, but we have
Mm.
an ability to show them what things are going to look like because our process is strong. So
Mm.
it's we're able to give them confidence that, hey, here's what we think makes a lot of sense based on all the input you've given us thus far. But like, look at it. Do you,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's a
are you
rendering.
reacting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How are you reacting to this?
Yeah.
So that helps bring some confidence to them too. That there's not so much like blind trust they have to have in us.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because when you were describing it, Devon, I was not really thinking that they show up on day one and day 8 weeks and then when on reveal day. Like, I know that but like the thing is, you guys have heard me on the podcast say 1,000 times, when I go to hire somebody, I want a professional.
Hmm.
Like, I don't want somebody that's like, well, like, no, like what I heard is what Michael just explained. They are involved. They do have an opinion.
Yep.
Like that's it. It's like, but bring to me the two best opinions and I'll pick between the two. I don't need to be all the way in the weeds. What, aren't there 40 other lamps I didn't see? Like, no,
Right.
you know what I'm saying? And so that speaks to me. And the thing is, I am your target client. I am not everybody's target client. But when you know that's your target client, that's what that person wants. It's like, do it well, do it better than everybody else, make my life easy. Don't surprise me with weird stuff, right?
Yep.
Give me the answer, the
Yeah.
opportunity along the way to say yes or no, yes or no. But also, I want the opportunity to say yes or no very efficiently and quickly.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, just put it in front of me. Yeah, no, yeah, you know, yeah, no, yeah, no. Okay, bye. Go back to work. See you. Bye. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like because
Exactly.
there is that trust, right? And I also just want to impress and say the way that you do it, the level of professionalism, the way that you're probably showing up to your meetings, the way that you're showing up on site. I have to believe that all of that is all in alignment because it can't be this big buttoned up process, but the other stuff is loosey goosey and super casual, right?
Right. And that's why we've added on general contracting to the business recently, is because where we were struggling to keep that process intact was when we would hand that
Mm.
responsibility off to a third party. And don't get me wrong, we worked with plenty of amazing builders and general contractors, but plenty not so good ones. And so
And you wanted
we
to have control over it.
Yeah, it
we did.
sours the client experience, right? Like we can
Yes.
give them the best experience during the design process, but if we're not the ones in their home, managing the trades and
Yeah.
actually delivering on the final product, then it can fall apart. So, yeah, we've been really happy the past year and a half since we brought that in-house, being able to just deliver a really cohesive process just from start all the way to finish.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
It's a lot of work
it's a
what you're
lot of
doing.
work.
Yes.
Uh, and now you have a 1-year-old in the mix on all of
We
it.
do. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I'm super impressed by you guys. I really, really am. I'm super impressed by you. And I'm so glad that you came here on the show and shared all this with us. I mean, it's going to be really fun watching what you guys create. Thanks for sharing all of your stuff with us today. We appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks, LuAnn. It was such an honor being able to come on here. So, really appreciated it and love being able to talk to you.
Thanks, LuAnn. Great talking with you.